we're continuing our look into the book Guard Your Tongue by Rabbi Zelig Pliskin, which gets together all of the main features of the life's work of the Chofetz Chayim, that is a Jewish sage which lived in up to the 20th century, so he's fairly recent, and does a good job to basically bring out what you need to know about Shimurat HaLashon and Loshon Hara, that is laws of clean speech and laws of evil speech, and to learn how to speak. Speech is something that's a predominant activity in our lives. It's a daily thing that we do, and so accordingly we should be learning about Shimurat HaLashon on a daily basis, because it's something that we do daily. And so anyone who's like 1% serious in leaning closer into Hashem's greatness and wants to align his will to his will has to have some books in his library on regular rotation, learning what these things are and how to go about executing the correct speech to really sort of be taken seriously. So what we've done up to this point is we've looked at the prohibitions relating to Loshon Hara, which is essentially looking at key verses in the Torah and seeing how they relate to Loshon Hara. And now we're up to the positive commandments relating to Loshon Hara found in the Torah. And the first one is number 1. It's from Devarim 24:9, where it says, "Remember what Adonai your Elohim did unto Miriam by the way as you came forth out of Mitzrayim, out of Egypt." The Torah obligates us to vocally recall the punishments of Miriam received by speaking Loshon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu. There are numerous factors that might have mitigated the gravity of Miriam's sins and thus her punishment. And so it goes through 7 positive aspects of Miriam's relationship, particularly with Moshe, and is essentially telling us, look, she had all these things going for her, 7 things in total, and yet she received this spiritual punishment of leprosy and was cast outside the camp for 7 days, which meant that she was essentially removed from the protective clouds of glory for 7 days, which during that time when Israel was in the wilderness, when you were removed and put outside the camp, it was a life risk. So it wasn't just like, go and have a think about yourself for 7 days. It was a question of survival. And the nation of Israel, despite the fact that they may have been given orders by Hashem to move, sometime within those 7 days, they chose to stay until Miriam could return. And also she had the positive merit of Moshe praying for her to be okay. So number 1, she spoke about a brother whom she loved dearly. So there's no question that she loved Moshe dearly, probably even more than her own life. She risked her life to save Moshe when he was an infant. There you go. 3, she raised him in his childhood. So she was the chief go-between between Paro's daughter and Moshe's mother, her mother. So as a consequence, she would have inadvertently spent probably the most time with Moshe when he was an infant. Number 4, she did not say anything actually derogatory about Moshe. She merely minimized the extent of his greatness. Number 5, since she did not speak in Moshe's presence, he didn't suffer embarrassment. Number 6, she did not speak against him in public. She privately spoke to Aaron, her brother. And number 7, Moshe Rabbeinu was the paragon of humility and was not affected by what Miriam said about her. So in most cases, when somebody is spoken about negatively by another person, another group of people, that can have an adverse effect on the person they're talking about as well. But in Moshe's case, it wouldn't have, because he was such an example of deep humility. Nevertheless, despite her righteousness, Miriam was punished with, it says here, leprosy, but it's a spiritual leprosy, zarat. Anyone who speaks Loshon Hara violates the command meant to recall what Hashem Yisbarach did to Miriam. And a small footnote here says, Rav Batzalel HaKohen of Vilna once told the Chofetz Chayim that if someone studies the laws pertaining to Loshon Hara, he fulfills the mitzvah of remembering Miriam's punishment. So well done. By clicking on this video, you have fulfilled the mitzvah of remembering Miriam's punishment and thus fulfilling the first positive commandment of Shimurat HaLashon, of Loshon Hara, by just simply watching and listening to this video. Well done. So number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. This is from Vayikra 19:18. The Torah obligates us to be equally considerate of the property and dignity of others as well as we are of our own, according to Rambam in his Deos 5.3. By speaking or listening to Loshon Hara, a person shows that he does not love the subject, definitely not to the degree that he loves himself. Although a person might be aware of his own faults, he does not want anyone else to speak about them. If someone does relate his faults, he hopes that the listeners will reject what they hear. Anyone who speaks or accepts Loshon Hara violates this commandment. So when we engage in negative talk about somebody with another person, unless it's for, in rare cases, a constructive purpose, maybe the person is thinking of taking the person that they're talking about on as an employer, and that other person knows that they're not trustworthy, and this is one of the rare occasions where it is allowed. But if that is not the case, the person is giving away the fact that they think of themselves obviously more highly than the subject, even though what they might be about to engage in and talk about is true, that the subject really did this bad thing. They're inadvertently saying that they obviously hold themselves in a higher place than this person, and they're not really as invested into the laws of Shimurat HaLashon to the extent that they're invested in their own desires, really, because they're choosing to speak about it when it's forbidden to. Okay. So number 3, in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor, and this is again from Vayikra 19:15. This verse obligates us to give someone the benefit of the doubt when we see him performing an action that could be interpreted in his favor, according to Ramban Sefer HaMitzvot, Positive Precept 177. If an average mitzvah observer does or says something, and the chances of a favorable judgment, and unfavorable judgment are equal, we must grant him a favorable judgment. If the person in question is a God-fearing man, we must judge him favorably, even if the unfavorable side outweighs the favorable one. So if the person's a Benoni, an intermediate one, somebody who's 50-50, only if the situation is a 50-50, could go either way, should we judge him positively. But if he's a righteous person, he's somebody that's on a level that's way above us, even if it's like far outweighs the negative, far outweighs the positive interpretation of what we're seeing in that moment, we are to still judge him favorably if he is on that level. If you assume that this person's action was improper and you relate it in that manner to others, besides violating the prohibition of Loshon Hara, you also violate this command or this commandment. Often a narrative may consist of entirely true facts, but because the action or words referred to were taken out of context, a completely distorted picture is conveyed. Also, many things are said or done in anger that under normal circumstances would not have been said or done. It is unfair to judge such incidents without taking the circumstances into consideration. So another little thing that was beginning to allude to there was, if we're angry or we're sort of a little bit excited, it's not a good time for us to speak. So even if that means that you have to just give yourself a little bit of time to think. In the modern world, emails are a good example. If somebody sends you a bad or a negative email, and it's tempting to, and they CC other people, maybe it's your boss they've CC'd in the email, it's tempting to defend yourself and reply all. Best thing to do is, if you're very upset and it's not true what they're saying, or maybe it's true and maybe you're upset, rather than reply and return fire with everybody reply all, type up the response, put it in your drafts, come back the following day, sleep on it, and then delete it. Then ring the person that sent you the bad email and have a chat to them over the phone. Chances are they've misinterpreted something that you've done or said. And in a lot of cases, when somebody sounds fairly aggressive on the emails, when you speak to them in person, they're delightful. And so, yeah, if you can maybe call somebody, it's probably better to speak to them over the phone than an email. Although it is good to email people, because if the subject has a lot of information, it's written up there on the screen, and you can draw on the information to do your part of the job. So it's you just have to use good judgment in those situations. Okay, so number 4, if your brother becomes poor and his means fail him, when he is with you, you shall support him. Vayikra 25:35. The Torah obligates us to give financial aid to a fellow Jew in order to prevent his becoming poor. This could be in the form of a grant, a loan, or a source of income, according to Ramban, Matnos Anayim 10:7. If you relate Loshon Hara, and as a consequence the subject loses his job or income, you have violated this commandment. Number 5, you shall rebuke your neighbor, Vayikra 19:17. If someone begins to tell you Loshon Hara, and instead of rebuking him, you assist him by listening to his narrative, you violate this commandment. It is important to remember that rebuke should be administered as soon as you realize that a narrative contains Loshon Hara. Do not wait until the other person finishes speaking. Every single word of Loshon Hara is a separate transgression, and it is your obligation to stop the other person from sinning. If you care about the person as much as you care about yourself, you should imagine that's you. What would you want you to do? So you dive in there and go, whoa, 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 and then make the conversation about something else and generate and inject the fear of Hashem into the conversation. You're not trying to close the other person down or be better than him. You're saying, hey, listen, we should be frightened here. We're treading a fine line. Number 6, this is from Devarim 10:20. To him shall you cleave. This commandment requires us to keep in the company of Talmudei Chachamim, which is wise men who are students of the Torah. There's a different stipulation here. There's Ben Torah, which are essentially sons of the Torah, but Talmudei Chachamim, these are people that are able to recall Talmudic sources on just about any subject that they're actually they're questioned about. And so these are men who are of the Torah that are on a higher stature than just the average Ben Torah. So we're to keep in the company of these men so that we should learn from their example, according to Ramban, Deos 6:1-2. If you forsake their company to join a group of people who are speaking Loshon Hara, you violate this commandment. So it's important to hang around people who are way wiser than you are, and to do whatever you can to be in their company as much as you can. Number 7, you shall fear my sacred place, Vayikra 19:30. We are obligated to act with reverence when we enter a shul or Beit HaMidrash, that is a house of study, since they are considered Mikdash Ma'at, a minor scale Beit HaMikdash. So any shul or synagogue is to be given the same reverence as you would give reverence to walking in the vicinity of the Holy Temple in Israel. And this is according to Yerim 3:44, Mishnah Berurah 151:1. Anyone who speaks Loshon Hara in a shul or Beit Midrash violates this commandment. So it's dangerous to even talk while somebody's praying or the cantor is leading a service, let alone speaking about Loshon Hara. Number 8, Vayikra 19:32. Before the grey head you shall rise, and you shall honor the face of the old man. This verse requires us to honor a Torah scholar, even if he is not aged, and an elderly person, even if he is not a scholar, according to Tractate Kiddushin 32b. If someone relates Loshon Hara about a Talmid Chacham or an elderly person in his presence, he violates this commandment. Number 9, you shall sanctify him, Vayikra 21:8. This verse obligates us to show respect to Kohanim, members of the priestly family. If you speak Loshon Hara about a Kohen in his presence, you violate this commandment. Now you've got to be very careful. The Kohanim are a class of Jews that are more restrictive in their lifestyle than the actual normal Jews. So it's like the English royal family. It's very easy to criticize members of the British royal family in this current day, in this current age, because we've become so liberal in a lot of things. But it's hard to have a level of set apartness that is meant to be 2 or 3 notches above the norm. And so we should very much give the Kohen, give the priestly class respect, and certainly not in a million years think about speaking Loshon Hara about a Kohen, whether he is observant or not observant, at least not observant as yourself, if you perceive that as such. So number 10, honor your father and your mother, Shemot, Exodus 20:12. The Torah obligates us to honor our parents. If you speak Loshon Hara about your father or your mother, you violate this commandment. This verse also includes an elder brother, and that's according to Tractate Kisubot 103a. Wow. Okay, so this is probably something that we've all fallen short in. Speaking ill about our parents. And a lot of times it's true, but we shouldn't do it. And we'll often say, oh, listen, I hope you don't mind, I'm just venting. The only problem is if we tolerate that, I need someone to vent with, it's going to not help the situation, and you're going to always need to vent because there's going to always be situations that frustrate you. And so it's about developing a mindset and a character where you're not frustrated by anything anymore. You're just happy to be alive. I'm happy to be healthy. I'm happy to be able to be among, the living. And so you're jumping for joy just for that. Anything else is just a huge bonus. The very pious, the righteous, they're just happy to be wearing clean clothes. They're just happy to be able to have a meal. They're happy to be able to walk upright. And you start to meditate on that. You start to think about that. And so anything else becomes a huge bonus. And so when something bad happens, you go, okay, great. Maybe there's some sort of some transgression that I've committed that the Almighty is returning midah keneged midah, measure for measure, back at me, and it's mitigated. I can actually handle this, so I'm okay with that. And some of us have had good parents, some of us have had bad parents, but sometimes those of us that have come to some sort of good in our lives, or a place where we know we're on the right path, we're a bit shaky, but we're on the right path, and we've had wicked parents, then that's amazing. That's amazing that you've come from that very difficult beginning, and you've rectified so many holy sparks. It's something to be thankful for, and complaining about it is not how we're meant to act. We're not meant to sit and complain about it. I did say we're going to finish the entirety of... we'll finish it. Let's finish it. Nearly finished it anyway. 1.5 pages to go. Number 11. Adonai your Elohim you shall fear. Devarim 10:20. We are obligated to realize that Hashem Yisbarach is aware of every move we make, and that there is retribution for every wrongdoing. Someone who is careless with his speech violates this commandment. Number 12, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. Devarim 6:7. Every single word of the Torah that you study is a fulfillment of a mitzvah. Conversely, for every single word of Loshon Hara that you speak, you are guilty of bitul Torah, not having spent your time fruitfully in studying the Torah. So you utilize every opportunity you can, especially with your kids, is to speak words of Torah or relate things back as best you can to the Torah. Number 13, from a false matter you shall keep yourself far. Shemot 23:7. If you add untrue details to Loshon Hara that you speak about someone, you violate this commandment. So this is sort of compounding the felony, as it were, and you're adding things that are actually untrue, so now you're lying. Number 14, this is our final one. Walk in his ways, Devarim 28:9. We are required to emulate the attributes of Hashem Yisbarach. Just as he is merciful and compassionate, so too we must be merciful and compassionate, according to Tractate Shabbos 133b. Among Elohim's attributes is his hatred for Loshon Hara. When Jericho was conquered, a ban was put on taking spoils from the city. When his army was defeated, In a subsequent battle, Joshua was told by Elohim that the ban was violated, that initial ban that was put in when they razed Jericho to the ground. Joshua asked Hashem for the identity of the transgressor, but Elohim replied, am I an informer? Cast lots to find out. Joshua, according to Joshua 7, Sanhedrin 11a. Anyone speaking Loshon Hara has failed to emulate Hashem and violates this commandment. There we go. We are finally up to chapter 2, onto the laws of Loshon Hara. And thank you so much for joining me up to this point in looking at the book Guard Your Tongue. Until next time, bye for now.